Hello, BookTube. This channel recently passed 7.3 thousand subscribers. I know that's not an official BookTube anniversary of any kind, but it does have 2 zeros. and it's become a kind of tradition on this channel that when I reach any kind of milestone, I throw open the door to Q&A, and you people have endless amounts of questions. So I threw open the door for questions to 7.3 Q&A, and I got bombarded with questions. So that's what we're going to do today. I've got the mini me all fired up, and we're going to do this just as we always do. I always hope that I will get this done in one video, and it always takes 4 because I tend to go on. So we'll see if that happens this time. We'll dive right into the questions, and we'll see how we do. So the first question, and I'll keep in mind, I mass copy and paste these questions from the comments field to a Google Doc. So there's a chance that I have jumbled some. There's a chance that I've missed yours. If that's true, simply hold your peace until 7.4K, which will be next weekend, and we will get to it then. So let's see here. First question is from Golden Books TAS, who has 4 questions. Number 1, what is the best 1-volume history of the Cold War? Well, best is kind of it's kind of reductive as a way to rank these things. There's no one that's best. But John Lewis Gaddis, for instance, did a volume a few years ago that is called The Cold War, and that's very good. The problem that you run into with a subject like the Cold War and 1-volume histories is that much will depend on how much access the author had to archives that are sometimes closed and sometimes open. So with a book like a subject like the Cold War or Soviet propaganda or something like that, there are 2 rationales. One is the insight and eloquence of the author, and the other is how much raw material they had to work with. But Gaddis's book is good. It's a good place to start if you've never read anything. Question number 2, best or favorite biography of JFK? Once again, best is, the single best is, it's a little bit reductive. It doesn't help at all. And it's only, Michael O'Brien wrote a biography of JFK about 10 years ago that was very good. It will certainly do as a place to start. Question number 3, keeping it presidential, what are your top 5 favorite presidents? Oh, God. And are they also the 5 best? Well, this is... I would say John F. Kennedy, William Howard Taft, John Quincy Adams, Calvin Coolidge, and probably Barack Obama to round out at number 5. And question number 4, why do I want to know all your favorite and best everything? Am I just a nuisance? Yes, that is a very nuisance way to ask questions. It's very reductive. It's so simple. That it's your right to do. Of course, this is your Q&A, not mine, but still, you asked the question. Housekeeping asks, you said that George Saunders was one of your favorite short story writers. I said he was one of my favorite living short story writers. He's very, very good for a living short story writer. What are some other favorites? And what are some of your favorite short story books? Okay, I guess we're not going to get away from favorites. I guess it's my channel, so it makes sense. But I would cite here the usuals. Mavis Gallant, John Cheever, Eudora Welty, Flannery O'Connor, John O'Hara, all people that I praised on this channel before. Their collected short stories are all worth your time. DJC Silva says, would you consider making videos on literature from different countries or cultures? I would, yeah, I'd consider it. I'm not sure that I would do it, since that would put me square in the crosshairs of cancel culture for cultural appropriation, but I could certainly consider it. Number 2, have you ever considered working or volunteering as a dog whisperer, helping problematic dogs? Well, for a long time, I have volunteered at, before the plague, before everyone was locked down, I volunteered at an animal shelter. Wherever I've lived, I've volunteered at animal shelters, and I've often helped out in those circumstances, and also innumerable friends over the years have had dog problems of one kind or another, and I'm the person they call. I don't know that there's a job for it. I didn't know what a dog whisperer was. If there is such a thing as a dog whisperer, I'm the only one in the world. Okay, and all the ones who claim they are not. But I'm still not sure that it would make a job. Question number 2, have you ever adopted a dog from a shelter? Yes, once or twice. Usually not. Usually whatever it is, fate or karma or kismet, Usually circumstances contrive to put a dog or multiple dogs in my path right when I'm going to need them. I mentioned that on this channel for a few years when I had my two old girls, my sweet old girls, Malin and Lucy. I would have sometimes mentioned in videos that people would ask me, are you going to adopt a new dog? Are you going to adopt a puppy? And I would say, well, I'm pretty sure that fate will work that out for me. And people would say, well, you don't believe in fate. You don't believe in the supernatural. What do you mean? And it was difficult to explain. I was just tell those people, it's always been my experience that a new dog comes to me when I most need one, whether it's through a friend or on the side of the road or whatever. And I could tell that a lot of those people were skeptical, and then it happened. As it always does, almost always does, where it happened, where I got a call about a puppy. But I would certainly, I didn't, every time that I'm coming close to losing my current dog or dogs, I always assume that that's not going to happen and make plans to go to an animal shelter and adopt a dog. And I know what I would do. I would adopt the oldest dog there, or two of the oldest dogs there. The ones who aren't going to get adopted, the ones who are going to stay for a month and then be euthanized. I would adopt the oldest dogs. I would take an afternoon to comfort them out of the trauma of their previous owners dumping them off when they're a little bit inconvenient. And then I would make them deliriously happy for all the time that they have left. But that didn't happen this time around. Instead, I got a puppy. And question number 4, how is your writing going on the memoirs? 7.3 subscribers are eagerly waiting. Yes, my memoirs, this enormous project that I have. I'm not writing anything on it because I have a couple of other writing projects, but I am seriously thinking about it. It'd be a huge undertaking. I would hope it would be a lot of fun to read, but I'm not sure that 7.3 thousand of you would buy it, even though it's only going to cost $1. I don't think 7.3 thousand of you would buy it. Let's see here. Poseidon99 says, what else besides reading books and writing about books do you like to do? That question must be on a lot of people's minds. Opening book mail or buying books doesn't count. What are you expecting me to say here? That I have a hidden passion for skiing that I've never told you about? For Pete's sakes, we were talking for 4 years. Opening book mail and buying books doesn't count, and you want to know what I like to do other than reading and writing about what I read. Well, I literally don't do anything else. Literally. I am not hiding a gardening fetish from you. I don't go out clubbing. Maybe Frida? Would Frida count? You're not ruling her out, I notice, in your question. So Frida would probably count, right? Aside from that, there is literally nothing. It is my whole life. Sorry. There's no board games. There's no jigsaw puzzles. There's no Macarena or anything like that. There's nothing. It's writing and reading. Anyway, John Petter says, your science guy side is really underexposed. Wish you'd show us more of your inner Dawkins. My question is, will your prediction of the coming 2020 presidential elections be based on expert mathematical models, trusted pundits, or your own simple intuition? There are no good mathematical models, and the trusted pundits were all wrong in 2016. The only person in 2016 who was right was me. It's not intuition. It's not intuition that will lead me to do this. I think I know how the 2020 election will go. The only thing that has messed with my prediction of the 2020 election, my prediction of the 2020 election has been in place, verbally unchanged, for 4 years, which is that Trump will easily win re-election in what counts the closest thing that electoral politics can come today as a landslide, and that when he eventually does leave office, whenever that is, it will be with approval ratings in the 70s. I've been saying that for years, and everyone's been saying, no, we can't, that the nation wouldn't survive. I'm not denying that. The one thing I didn't anticipate was an act of God. In this case, a plague, a pandemic. The numbers in America are staggeringly bad. Staggering. And they're going up straight, which on a graph is not something that you want to see. Even in bad news, you want a graph to do this. The numbers in America are doing this. And the bulk of the American electorate is not all that sophisticated. If right now, in the map of the United States, If bright burnt red is the color for states that where COVID cases are on the rise, and it's almost the whole country. It's like 40 states out of 50. And that number of states keeps going up. And the little Lothlorien states in the Northeast, New Jersey, New York, Vermont, Massachusetts, who dealt with this with responsible governors, Democratic and Republican, and got numbers down, I don't think there's any chance that they can remain uninfected unless they start barring travel from other states if it gets to that point. And I think it would be too late. I think it's too late already for that. People in the United States move around. But that's the one element that wasn't in my calculation about whether or not Donald Trump will win in 2020. All the other elements say that he will win easily. For the last 15 years, the Republican Party has been at work destroying voting districts, gerrymandering voting districts, working actively, openly on voter suppression. That you need an ID in order to at your polling station. You absolutely do not. You need an ID in order to register to vote. You do not need an ID to vote. You've already registered. Removing polling places so that people have to drive for 5 hours and wait 10 hours in line simply to cast a vote. All of that is flagrantly illegal, and the Republican Party has been working on that because their electoral base has been shrinking with every census, and they know that. If they didn't do that, they would lose badly all over the place instead of just in Democratic strongholds, and they know that. All of that stuff is true, and also an element that doesn't usually come up in these discussions. There's a massive online mobilization of Trump voters, just like there was in 2016. Massive. On Reddit and 4chan and 8chan, it's an explicitly white power mobilization, but it's very effective. Before 2020, I would have looked at all that and said, well, if you've rigged the game coming and going, you're certainly going to win re-election. But a plague might change things. Right now, estimates are that 1 in 100 Americans is affected directly by this. They're either sick with this virus, or they know someone, or even, God forbid, lost someone to this virus. 1 in 100 in a nation of 330 million. If that gets down to 1 in 50, the president who is president while that is happening cannot be reelected, I would think. Cannot be reelected, even with the alternate reality bubbles that we have set up all over the place. Even with fact-denying bubbles like that, I can't imagine that a president presiding over a country that is literally dying could win re-election. I could be wrong, though. But it's not based on any of those things that you mentioned. It's based on what people are actually doing. Same thing in 2015 when I looked at the various campaigns. I saw a campaign run by a racist, sexist, fascist, lying moron. Someone who was an embarrassment when he talked. Someone who the written transcripts of his verbal comments looked, as one commentator put it in 2015, like the ramblings of a head trauma patient. Someone who could make racist, ableist, horrible, crass commentary and insult his own voters. Say, I'm going to take away your health care. Say, I love low education voters. And nothing would happen to his polling. I looked at that and came to a simple conclusion. A campaign that can't do anything to hurt its chances will win. That makes obvious sense. Doesn't matter what the campaign is. If it can't do anything wrong, then it will win. The culmination of never doing anything wrong is winning. I would ordinarily say the same thing now. Trump is a god to his followers. Literally, they worship him as a god. He can't do anything wrong. If he says that 2 and 2 are 5, they believe it. And ordinarily, I would say that means he will certainly win, especially since the alt-right in this country is far, far more organized and bigger than normal people think. And that would do it. But if the whole country is dying, then I don't know. I don't know whether or not that will affect my calculus. Added request, any good books on futurology or prediction? No, there are none. Michael Moore asks, questions from your English lurker. Oh, my dear, I have many English lurkers. Lurkers do more lurking in England than they do anywhere else. Is that a national thing? What are your thoughts on modern poetry? I don't particularly like it. It's incredibly self-indulgent because it has divorced itself from craft. I have heard you give different opinions on this over time. What do you think of Billy Collins and A.E. Stallings? All right, he's the worst and she's the best of modern poetry. So there you go. We're going to keep an eye on the time, because once again, I'm going to break this into 30-minute bricks for you, and then who knows how many there will be. MNIKM asks, would you recommend Russell's A History of Western Philosophy as a good overview of philosophy without having to read the entire canon? Yes, I would. It's a fine idea. Or you could skip that and just look up Western philosophy on Wikipedia and read that. That ought to give you enough material to name drop at parties, which is all that philosophy is good for anyway. Definitely don't spend any time reading this garbage. Let's see. The Steve Doctrine. Steve likes the name. Aside from the fabulously clever and articulate American couplet of Steven Crowder and Ben Shapiro, are there any political commentators you love / would recommend reading? Do you like, for instance, well, I'm taking this as all tongue-in-cheek, but when you mention Steven Crowder and Ben Shapiro, don't forget there's a much lesser known, but much worse, much more dangerous Nazi commentator online called John Doyle. You want your blood to boil, watch one of his videos. Anyone will do. He is far more... Crowder is an oaf. And Ben Shapiro is too much of a grifter to put himself out on a thin limb. He will look out for himself and his family before he will look out for any kind of ideological cause, which makes him kind of harmless. But John Doyle is looked at on Reddit, on 8chan and 4chan as the messiah of the alt-right, because he's 20. So I would definitely, don't forget him. If I were going to make this call-out culture drama channel that so many of you seem to want me to make, John Doyle would be the first person that I would attack. Karen Ivoniak says, do you ever read a story out loud to Frida Bean, and if so, does she enjoy it? Sometimes I will read, not a whole story, sometimes I'll read a thing out loud to Frida. She does. She loves it when I talk to her, and as far as she's concerned, I am talking to her when I read out loud, so there's no problem there. The only exception to that was the early part of 2020, where I fell into the habit while it was still cold out, of reading an entire old Regency romance novel to her every morning. The whole thing. And that was tremendous fun. Oh my God. For me, tremendous fun. Teaches you so much about a book to read the whole thing out loud. Let's see here. Sandy451 says, between the time you retired from bookselling and the beginning of filming several videos a day for BookTube, with whom did you chat about books? Well, between those two things, it was the same as before and after. I have lots of bookish friends. You've seen some of them on this channel. My friend Sam, my friend Deb, and lots of other people that I correspond with. Now it's all correspondence because nobody visits anybody. But I am not one of these booktubers who started their booktube channel because they had nobody to talk to about books. I have always been blessed with having lots of people to talk to about books, and that's still true. It's just I've added all of you, and that has been so much fun. Francine K, how are we doing for time? All right, we're fine. Francine K says, let's see here, you must be the only YouTuber whose video upload count easily rival or surpass their subscriber count. Could be. Questions. Have you ever encountered torn or missing pages with any used book you've purchased and started to read? I know you've discussed how you check the overall condition of the book and whether they will hold up over time. I try to flip through, but I've been burned a few times with books that are not so easy to find again. Well, the Brattle Bookshop here in Boston is where I do a lot of my used book shopping, and they're pretty good about looking through the books ahead of time. Manifest physical details like that, books, pages that are missing, pages that are burned or ripped or torn. I would spot that before I would get the book, usually. The only problem of a gross physical nature like that I sometimes encounter is that I won't take a careful enough examination of the strength of the binding before I buy the thing. I get it back here and it's not going to survive a read. But that's rare. And much rarer now that I'm trafficking so much in ebooks where that is not a problem. None of these things are problems with ebooks. None of them are. An ebook is always itself. It's always fine. It tells you where you stopped reading. You can write a whole book of commentary on it without a pencil. You don't need anything. You don't have to hold the thing open with one hand while you're writing with another. You don't have to wonder what you write. You can, once you've written that book of commentary, you can email it to yourself, separate from the book. Don't get me started. You didn't get me started, I know. Let's see here. Andrew Russell says, your channel just keeps growing. Long may it continue. No, don't say that. Don't say that. There are enough of you right now. Okay. Let's see. Hope you don't mind if I ask 2 questions. Do you have a preferred period in history about which you prefer to read? And if so, why is this? I don't. I have a handful, about 10 periods that I love about equally to read. And the second question is, what is the friendliest and most welcoming region/country of the world you have ever visited? That's going to be Iowa, here in America. Maybe not right at the moment, since Iowa and the rest of the middle of the country, from the East Coast to the West Coast, from the Rockies to the Appalachians, is now entering a heat dome of monstrous proportions. And it looks like it's going to produce triple-digit temperatures for 2 solid weeks. It doesn't look like it's going to move at all. Hoping it doesn't come here. Let's see here. Said Day asks, what do you think of Otessa Moshfegh? I don't like her writing. I don't know her personally. William Fett says, all my questions deal with Westerns. Favorite, oh God, it's going to be a list of favorites again. All right, well, that's unavoidable. Favorite, so Westerns, your favorite author, your favorite novel, your favorite nonfiction book, your favorite TV series, and your favorite movie. Goodness gracious. All right. Favorite author of Westerns, probably Elmore Leonard. Favorite novel, Lonesome Dove. What were the other prompts here? Favorite nonfiction would be Epitaph by Mary Doria Russell, her novel about the gunfight at the OK Corral. Just beautiful. Not well enough known. Not well enough appreciated. Favorite, I guess I named 2 novels, didn't I? Well, so be it. Favorite TV series, set in what we can loosely describe as the Wild West, it would be Deadwood. Hands down. What a show. Oh my God. What a show. And favorite movie? Well, that would be True Grit. The John Wayne True Grit. Closely followed by Rooster Cogburn, the sequel, with John Wayne and Katharine Hepburn. Closely followed. In fact, there are many times where I would say I prefer the sequel to the original in that one, but True Grit is tough to beat. Let's see here. Link Joker says, number 1, thoughts on the Richard Sharp novel series. I like them. Number 2, we all know your disdain towards Julius Caesar and George Washington, but what other historical figures do you believe are held in far higher esteem than they actually deserve? Well, along the lines of Julius Caesar and George Washington, there's a third member of that triumvirate, Napoleon Bonaparte, who's, if anything, even more egregious a case, since occasionally Caesar and Washington both displayed some of the qualities their hagiographers say they displayed all the time. Napoleon Bonaparte never did. He's entirely the construction of hagiographers. So that's my evil trinity right there. There are plenty of other historical figures that I love, take the wind out of. But those 3 are venerated as 3 great military geniuses, and they were all idiots on that very subject, and horrible people in addition. Anyway, let's see here. Question number 3, favorite Victorian poet, Tennyson. Question number 4, outside of the great Kurt Swan, who are some of your favorite Superman artists? My favorite other than Kurt Swan, I mean, I like some of the things that pretty much all of them do, even Wayne Boring. But other than my favorite overall Superman artist, other than Kurt Swan, would be Ed McGuinness, who didn't do enough Superman, in my opinion. He's perfect for it. Just perfect. And he, in the same way that Scott McDaniel is perfect for Batman. I wish that the 2 of them would just be on Superman and Batman forever. But no. How are we doing for time? And there's one other thing that I'm thinking in addition to time, and that's the power level on the phone. But I think we got through a whole batch of these once before without that. I'm wearing too much. We'll do a few more. Let's see here. Jonathan Noel asks, are you still in contact with the Prince of Darkness, Adam from Memento Mori? No, I am not. Have you been watching his great quarantine streams? I have not, no. Chapter 21 says, in the 7.2 Q&A, you said that you like Harlan Ellison as a writer. Does this mean you disliked him as a person? Did you ever meet him? I did meet him, and I didn't particularly like him as a person. I personally love his character and can't get enough of his interviews. Okay, well, good for you. We're not arguing here. It's just a personal preference, that's all. Question number 2. In the same Q&A, you listed your favorite Star Trek episodes, the best of all being The City on the Edge of Forever. What do you think of Harlan's original script for the episode, as it was heavily altered in the final edit, much to the fury of Ellison? Do you think it should have been kept the same? Also, have you read the graphic novel adaptation of Ellison's original script? I loved it and personally think it's the best version of the experience. We're going to disagree on every aspect of that, except that it's a great episode. Harlan Ellison, let's just say most of his objections to City on the Edge of Forever came after it became popular, not while it was going on. It wasn't him pounding on doors of executive producers saying, "What have you done to my masterpiece?" He had a way about him, he had a tick, he had a nervous response of attacking anything that looked like it was taking the limelight away from him. And also of being the final judge and arbiter of everything involved with himself. The version of City on the Edge of Forever that was televised for Star Trek was infinitely better than the incredibly muddled thing that he created or claims to have pushed originally. The story that was made, that was then adapted into that graphic novel that you mentioned, has almost nothing to do with Star Trek, and everyone in it is out of character. He was happy to get the money for that episode. Let's just put it that way. He was happy to do what it took to get the money for that episode. And 99.9% of what follows from him about that whole thing is fabricated by him. You just have to watch out for that when it comes to Harlan Ellison. So I prefer his fiction. I don't have to worry about that. Duncan McCurdy says, I know you are a defender of freedom of speech, but were you secretly hoping that the Mary Trump book would be held up in court indefinitely so you wouldn't have to read it? No, I know what you mean, and I'm grateful for the concern, but no, I don't want anybody mucking around with this. And it says volumes. I know that we're past the point where you can talk to Trump worshippers at all. It's a cult. And I'm not just lazily saying that. I've examined it from start to finish, and it is a cult. If it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, then it's a cult. So there's nothing I can do or say to those people to change their mind. But it speaks volumes about you if you go to court to stop a book from being published about you when you're a public figure. It speaks volumes about you. It doesn't say anything about the book. And look how many times Trump has either threatened to do that or tried to do it. And come closer each time, because he wants no freedom of expression in this country. You're free to praise him, but that's it. And let's see, let's finish up with this one. Matt Crash says, do you enjoy the works of O. Henry? Sure I do. Also, what's the story behind the teddy bear on the top shelf behind you? Well, if you look carefully, you'll see that there are 3 teddy bears on the shelf behind me. They each have stories. So we'll stop there. That's about 30 minutes. We'll stop there and we'll move straight on after this. So I will wrap this up and I will be right back.